Hey everyone, it's Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy here, and welcome to another Lunch with Norm, the Amazon FBA and e-commerce podcast.
Lunch with Norm.
All right, today on the show we're going to be doing something special. We're going to be giving feedback. We're going to be asking for feedback from our Beard Nation. We just launched a chat bot. We want you to go over to Messenger and try it out. Just go to our page, Lunch with Norm Podcast, check it out, and just give us some feedback. We want to make sure we made it right and that it's, what should I say? We tried to make it engageable. All right, and today on our podcast, we're going to be talking about recruiting top e-commerce talent. Our guest is the founder and CEO of both Multiply and Escala. He has a background in digital marketing and advertising and worked with companies like Mercedes-Benz, Mastercard, Sony, and ... all these Fortune 500 companies. In addition, being a scaling expert and entrepreneur, Yoni also hosts the podcast Successful Scales. Our guest today is Yoni Kozminski. Now, Kelsey, where are you?
Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Monday episode. And we got a great crew coming in already. We got Andrew, Simon, Manny, Faye, wow, Jessica Rabbit. Oh, that's awesome.
We should have a contest between the YouTubers and the Facebook group, and some of the LinkedIn. Come on, LinkedIn, you gotta join us here.
But thank you guys for joining us. No, it's great. There is like a definite divide. Like there is a YouTube group, and then there's the Facebook group, which is I never thought
the challenge is on.
But yes, welcome to the show, everyone. Smash those like buttons, give us those thumbs up to get the show moving, and we're going to jump into it shortly. But before we do, if you're not a part of our community, you can go over to our Facebook group, Lunch with Norm, Amazon FBA, and eCommerce Collective. That's where all the good stuff is. You can engage with us. Me and Norm are always hanging out there. You can show us your memes, ask your questions about Amazon eCom, and Jessica Rabbit. The cool kids are on YouTube.
That's the cool kids table, huh?
Yeah, that's the cool hangout.
Right.
But I think that's about it. We do have a prize today, so get ready for that. It's going to be a good one, and we can jump into it.
Well, just a note. We also are coming up to our 200th episode, which is going to be on Wednesday. Reason why I'm saying that is we wanted to get a bit of your feedback. We've reviews either on Google, Facebook, YouTube, on Apple Podcasts. Anyways, anybody who's listening, who's enjoyed the podcast or doesn't, please leave us a review. We're just trying to get a few reviews to, just have the ability for people to check out our podcast, see what it's all about. So what more can I say? I'm pumping reviews.
It is great.
I'm not, but Kelsey,
you're subtle about it too.
Your suggestion was provide $20 per review. I said, that's a bit too much, right? Okay. So if you got comments, throw them over on the right and we'll get to them. Sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee and enjoy this show. It's going to be good. Where is he? There he is. Yoni,
how are we doing?
How are you?
Mate, it's an honor and a pleasure to be sitting here with you, Norm, and Kelsey too. Excited to sit and chat.
I gave you the $20 for that, right?
Yeah. No, I heard 40 before you hit live. So,
oh, really?
Well, yeah, it's
Kelsey
going down, guys.
Give you some too. Yeah.
You know what they say though? You don't ask, you don't get, Norm. So you gotta be asking for those reviews.
That's what I say. Yeah, that's exactly what I say. Except on Amazon, I don't really go out and do that. But this is the Amazon podcast. All right, Yoni, for those of us who don't know you, can you just give us a little bit of background, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, so I am Yoni Kozminski. I'm originally from Australia, so apologies if the accent's a little tough to muster. But I spent, like you started rattling off, I spent the first decade of my career working with Fortune 500 companies like Mercedes-Benz and Sony, growing up in the age of digital. So social wasn't a thing when I started. I launched Mercedes-Benz, Australia, New Zealand's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, working with the legal teams, trying to convince them that, it's safe, nothing's going to happen to us and we can legally go about this in the right way. And so that was my career until I found my way very deeply into e-commerce about 4 or 5 years ago. I joined a couple of guys that had an Amazon business. They're doing about 2 million in revenue. And by effectively creating systems and building an agency arm of that business in the Philippines, we were able to scale it from 2 to 5 million in about 12 months. That business ended up being acquired by Thrasio. And as a result, went on to create a couple of businesses where the objective was, how do I help sellers achieve the same level of success that we saw there? How do we build professional teams, not, VA teams? How do we actually give people the tools to get access to that talent and also pay them fair wages and make sure that it's a win-win scenario? And how do we build those systems at an elite level? So we have about 25 management consultants who are all mostly ex-Ernst & Young. Some are out of Accenture, some are out of Deloitte, but all come from the Philippines. So we're able to deliver and effectively build systems for e-commerce businesses. And I'd argue, or I'd guess, that we're probably the only company on planet Earth that's doing this with a pure focus on e-commerce in the Amazon space. So yeah, that's a little bit about, in as quickly as I can, that's a little bit about what we do and what I've done.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I have to say that I am using your business right now. And I don't usually, give a plug, but I found it incredibly easy and very professional. So I was on the phone with a couple of your team members last night at 9 and this morning at 9:30, looking for people, and they've done a great job, a really great job. So anyways, kudos to your company.
I'm stoked to hear that. That's $100 your way, mate. No.
Oh, all right. There we go.
No. I mean, it's always, and you as someone who has multiple businesses, it's always such a delight to hear that the experience that you've tried to craft is one that's actually adding value and making people's lives easier. So yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, the team will absolutely find out about this if they're not watching already.
Yeah. So I got to give props to Carla. Anyways, we're going to be talking about building that team, that top team. And I've had plenty of experience with this. We've discussed this before. And I found it incredibly hard at the beginning. I burnt through a ton of time. I spent a lot of money. People don't realize the amount of money associated with wrong hires. I've been told, I don't know if this is still the number, but I've told every wrong hire basically costs you about $5,000 in time and labor.
It's more.
It's
more. It's more, yeah. So there's a great book, and I'm sure I'll make lots of references to it today. Who, the A Method for Hiring? They actually did a study on this, and they said that it's 15 times or more the base salary of the employee that you hire. Wow. That's the true cost to business in lost time, onboarding, replacement, going through that whole process. So, we're talking significant.
Yeah, and it just takes you away from your business. So, going back and finding that great person, let's talk about that. What should be the first action step people should take?
So the first action step that I would take, in trying to find the right person, is actually understanding who is that right person. So a lot of people will rush out and they'll look for, let's take the example, a marketing manager. They'll look for a marketing manager because they don't really understand marketing, and they think that's the answer to all of their prayers, where in reality, maybe they just needed to build a bit more traffic, let's say external traffic to their Amazon store, because that was going to be an immediate boost in traffic and hopefully conversions. And so understanding what the desired outcome is and building that outcome, or, the mission statement around the role, is the first step that you take, so that you're actually building towards, if they are successful and we are successful as a business, we're driving in the same direction. It's not just, have you been able to do these responsibilities and had these accountabilities and manage a team of X size and off you go. That's, that resume matches that resume. Understanding what the outcome is and working backward toward that is, I would say, the most intelligent approach you could take to getting it right.
One of the big mistakes that I made, even though you might have that you show the corporate culture, you build that job description, but it's not understanding the culture of where you're going to find the person. So you're primarily are in the Philippines, but let's say it's India or over Nigeria. It could be all over the world. How important is that? How important is it to at least either the recruiter or the person, the Amazon seller, going and trying to find somebody the first time? Like everybody, it seems like the Philippines, it's your go-to place. How important is to understand the culture there?
Yeah, I would say, understanding the culture that you work with, as a baseline is critical. If you're not getting that right, then obviously you're going to misinterpret how things, effectively work. And I'd even argue, I grew up in Australia. I moved to the US. It took me time to fully comprehend the US culture and what that was to Australian culture. Very, very different in themselves. So yeah, I think culture is critical. We obviously focus on the Philippines, and there's, a whole laundry list of reasons why that was the driving decision for me, outside of the geolocation based, financial arbitrage, that the cost of living there is sort of 50 to 80% less than what it would be in the US. You have highly educated, highly motivated, and very loyal people as a culture. Those were key drivers for me. So, not to go too far into the Philippines, obviously it's something that I'm really passionate about, but, inside of the BPO space, the business process outsourcing industry, 95% of people are college educated or higher. So, you're working with people who studied in English. So the language barrier is obviously, void when you're working with professionals. But yeah, I mean, to be totally frank with you, that's why I've struggled hiring in other regions and other locations. Either language was too much of a barrier, or, aspects around loyalty for other regions. I felt like it was more like a hired gun. They'd come, they'd work a project, someone would offer them more money, and off you go. Whereas if you build, we've been able to really establish and build a strong cultural relationship and push forward to, to things inside of the Philippines. So, yeah.
So biggest cultural difference, let's stick with the Philippines. So I go over there, US, Canada, seller, first time. What are some of the differences you can expect?
Some of the differences that you'll expect, or some of the surefire ways, and I call it, for lack of a better term, like the disappearing Filipino act.
Yes. An emergency just came up.
Yeah. My house was both flooded and on fire at the same time, and I couldn't come in for the next 6 months. So I would say from a cultural standpoint, and I think this would probably be sort of broader in, Southeast Asia, or the Asian region, is like when situations are very confrontational, it's something that you want to effectively avoid. So,
right.
Approaching it and educating someone and showing them why, but also allowing them or giving them the space to actually fail and say that that's okay. I mean, those are critical things to work with the Philippines. If you're, if something, let's say something on your website gets deployed live and there's grammatical errors and things aren't rendering, and you absolutely blasted them on the other side of the Zoom link, I wouldn't have, you'd probably at a 50-50 on whether they're coming into work the next day, depending on sort of how you vetted and what you've sort of looked for. I would say that's probably one of the bigger cultural differences and things that can easily escalate to something that's, undesirable for both parties.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, being able to, the other big point I want to make is that proper training, right? If you don't train the person properly, how can you expect them to be 100%? And yeah, I hate using the expression, let them, give them enough rope, but yeah, I mean, don't micromanage, let them go out, let them succeed, and praise. One of the other things too, when you're hiring somebody, a pay scale. I think that's really important. Now, I know with your organization, you're going out, you're finding high quality people. You're not looking at, I hear some people talking about the $2 range or the $3 range. We want to pay higher because we want to make sure, and I'm not saying, like, if I'm working with your recruitment company, you're coming back to me with a wage that's already solidified. And typically it would be a good wage that person can live with, survive on, and not worry about where the next dollar is coming from. And I think that's very important too. But what about, the other thing is expertise. So with hiring a VA, are you looking for somebody that can do everything? Is it possible to find somebody that can do everything? What can you expect?
So we have a term for that. We call them, when you're working with people and they're looking for that creative director CFO role, the unicorn that can handle the analytics plus the creative side of things. I mean, the reality is those people are, an almost impossibility to find anywhere in the world. So why would you look into the Philippines as a credible source? I mean, there are 120 million people, so it's a pretty large population. So maybe you find those unicorns. But I would just say, for me, like how we look at the world, I would argue that pretty much every single person on our management consulting team, they're either industrial engineers or CPA, accountants. They're much more capable than even I am. So I would say that I don't look at the world in VAs, virtual assistants that are doing sort of those baseline. I feel like there's a graduation process. Like when you're starting off and you're not sure of that first hire, so you're like, okay, I'm going to hand over these baseline tasks and I'm going to get them to free up a little bit of time because, my time is valuable and it's something that, like everyone else, I've only got 168 hours of it a week. So that's sort of the entry level. But as you start to graduate, you want professionals who can do things that you can't. And so, I'm a big believer in hiring specialists, not generalists, I guess is the point I'm making here.
Great point. Now, before we go to the next question, I just wanted to ask anybody who's listening, either do they have a VA or do they not have a VA? Are they satisfied? Give us some horror stories of, what went right or what went wrong. Be interesting to hear that. Now, Yoni, you also have a giveaway today. Can we talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You want me to go ahead?
You go ahead, sir.
So there's two companies that I'm running here. There's Multiply Me, which is our staffing solution. And so for everyone who's listening in and mention lunch with Norm, we're going to waive the executive search fee. So they're going to get $500 off. So you don't actually pay anything until we find you.
I had to pay that, by the way.
Yeah. So even you guys are getting a better deal than Norm right here.
Son of a.
Well, it's all about the community, Norm. It's all about the people that we're trying to help, right? So what I'm prepared to give away for free is an hour consult with me on the Escala front. So what I'll do is, rather than our discovery call, which goes into effectively like how do we work with you, I'm actually going to teach you how we build our systems, our SOPs, our training video, our documentation on a private one-on-one.
That's fantastic. Just building out that SOP and understanding how to do that and not having to go out and watch, 1,000 training videos. I mean, that's priceless. And especially coming from you. I know Yoni is a specialist in writing SOPs. We've talked about it a long time, in a phone call that we've had back a few months ago. So that's an incredible giveaway. That's hashtag Wheel of Kelsey. If you want to get entered twice, it just tagged 2 people. Okay, sir. Now I want to talk a bit more about how do you know how to hire? You get 700 different resumes that come back from onlinejobs.ph or whoever you're using out there, Craigslist out there, or coming through your company and you've got your people going through these tons of resumes. How do you get it down to a short list, to a shorter list?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's one that most people struggle with. There's actually 4 key areas or 4 key problems that people fail while they're going through this process. And the first is really understanding what the actual needs are in the job that they're hiring for. So when they go through that process, they're, like I was saying, define the outcome. they're not even sure who they're looking for. But once they get to that stage, and let's say you understand the outcome, people struggle with having a pretty low flow of candidates. So where do I even start to look, and how do I build that pipeline? And then what gets even worse through this process is an inability to actually pick the right candidate when I've got them sitting and I've gone through this rigorous interview process. And then lastly is actually losing them when you found them and you finally got through it. So the question was, how do I know that I've found the right candidate while I've gone through this interview process? So once you've defined the outcome and you understand what success looks like, you need to build. I mean, you're an SOPs guy. We had a great conversation, and I'll never forget your commitment to the guy who almost lost his job because he failed to deliver on the SOP to make coffee in the morning.
Yeah, that's a true story. Yeah, you got down to the third strike.
And brilliant. What a way to educate people on the importance of SOPs without, ramming it down their throat. It's really, this teaches you the fundamentals of how a system works, and you've built it around putting on a pot of coffee in the morning, which I think is just such an amazing way to teach people. So having your defined process. So you can't walk into an interview and simply just look at someone's resume and start firing questions on the back of what it is. At that point, they control the outcome. They control the conversation. When was the last time you received a resume, Norm, and someone put all of their weaknesses in it and everything that wasn't really good about how they delivered, And I wouldn't advise anyone to do that if they're searching for a job. But building your own set of questions and having it very clearly marked. So, I can give you even some example questions, Norm, that I ask on every interview. So before I even go into talking about Multiply Me or a Scala or the opportunity, I want to be on a blank canvas. I want it to be a totally fresh slate, and them to come in. I want to understand about them before I tell them about us. So the first question I'll ask will be something along the lines of, what are you really passionate about? What are your career goals? And that opens them up to start talking about what they love, what motivates them. And the idea is to already at that point understand, well, does this individual's career goals line up with the role and the function that we're playing in the business, in what I'm going to hire them to do, right? Like having that ability to, again, have the standardized questions, exactly what you're going to ask in every single candidate. When you have that defined outcome, you also want to have a rating system. So whether it's a 1 through 10 or A through F, you want to be able to compare, because let's assume that you interview 5, 10, 15, I don't know how many people. Very hard to go back 2 weeks and remember, I remember her, she was fantastic, but what did I like about her again? So really committing to that process of standardizing the questions that you're asking and making sure that the potential answers that come back are ones that are actually going to help dictate, are they a right fit for the role or not? It's very easy to get caught up in having just a great chit chat about things. And, all of a sudden I really have an emotional connection to the individual, but are they motivated to push the business forward in what they're going to deliver on?
Do you use video at all?
Through the interview process?
For the description. So if you're trying to hire anybody, do you do a video, send it out there so people can see what the job description is going to be, the culture?
That's a great question, and I'll say that us generally we don't have, we are working on employer branding type collateral, and we have a bunch of that, but around the job descriptions at the moment we don't. That said, I spent 2 months searching for a marketing manager. We've just made an offer to someone locally here in Israel. And, and I can talk to you about the roles that are easy to find in the Philippines and the roles that are more complicated. And with him, I did record a video. So I put a 2-minute video talking a little bit about the culture, talking a little bit about the company on Loom, showing them the job description. And that worked really well for me. That got a lot more people's attention. So I would recommend it.
One of the things that we've started to do is we create you're going to roll your eyes. You go, what are you doing? But we create about a 10-minute video. And the beginning is talking about the culture of the company, and we'll slip something in there about what we want to see or how we want the resumes to come back, because you are trying to get those 400, and it's not hard to get 400 resumes, but we're trying to get those 400 resumes down to 30 resumes so we can get that short list. And one of it is just, first of all, you want to be passionate about your company and talk about, what you're doing, the job description, and then you'll slip in, okay, on your email, put in this or whatever. And on the second paragraph, make sure you mention this. And then you'll get that short list. And then the second part to what we're doing is getting them to provide us with a video before we go into the interview process. So it takes a bit of time, but you can get down to that 10 people short list very quickly with video without even touching anything. And by the way, I got to tell you, if you stand out, you've got the biggest chance in the world to get selected. I'll tell you, I never told you this, but on a resume, so we were looking for a graphics designer, and this is back in the day of paper, right? So that's probably before you were born, Yoni. So anyways, we got all these paper resumes for this graphic designer, and they're all typed up really nice. And one stood out. To this day, it stood out. Somebody did it in crayon. And I thought, wow, like this, and they did a great job of it. And it's for graphics. And I thought, this person's creative. And so they did get the interview. I don't remember if they got the job though. But anyways, they got my attention enough to, they stood out. And I think that's what you're probably looking for, are those people that can stand out when you are doing that first interview, which leads me to the next question. The interviewing process. How many interviews? And what should each interview have in it? What type of content? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in a second. I just want to tell you there is a piece of technology or software called myinterview.com. And if you're going down that route of having people submit video interviews and you want to sort of, cull the top of the funnel that way, it's a really good tool.
Oh, I never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's actually an Israeli company, and they do a really good job. I mean, I've looked at all of them. There's another one called SparkHire, but affordability and just how their UX UI, it's really, really simple. So again, you're going to have issues that relate to that as well. If you're talking about the Philippines, not everyone is going to feel super comfortable to do the one-way interview to a video. So, just be cognizant of who your audience is. I've used it and it worked well for certain roles, less good for others. But anyway, you asked the question, when you're going through this interview process, what are some of the key stages, or how many rounds of interview do you go through? What does that look like? So I would say for us internally, we have 5 rounds of interview before we actually hand it off to a client, but that's broken down into certain ways. I'd say if you're working with remote teams, I mean, the things that are now, and everyone works with remote teams, obviously, most of the world is shut down and everyone's working from their home plus minus, depending on where they sit in the world. So making sure that they have, adequate hardware and internet connectivity and backup generators, depending on where they sit. I mean, those are fundamentals. But when we go to the interview process, what we do is we have a pre-screening interview. So in the first interview, you're just trying to validate. So let's say that maybe the My Interview solution could be how you validate, trying to understand how does their past experience in their resume actually align with what they're going to be delivering on. So asking questions that relate to, are they a right fit? Are they a right fit from what they can deliver? Because we're not moving into that stage yet of the actual interview, when we're trying to understand, who is this person? Are they aligned? They have to sort of, you're moving from top of the funnel right to the long tail. We're going to talk marketing speak here. So that would be the first stage, is to cut from the top, and then as you start to move in, then you want to start asking those questions, like I said. Some of the other questions that relate to, like, once you've gotten past that first stage of, are they a fit? Did they do what they said they'd done? Questions like, what were you hired for in your last role? Why were they brought into the team in the first place? And what was the impact they had? So that the follow-up would be, what were you particularly proud of in your last job, in what you delivered. And again, always opening it up at the start for them to talk about what it is they're passionate about, what are the areas that they're excited about, because the hope is that it's aligned with the motivations they're going to have and what they're going to be delivering on when they're in that role. And then what we then do is we have like a focused day where you have multiple interviews back to back. And I mean, it depends on how sophisticated you are. I mean, you can take it as far, we're sort of moving closer toward, maybe not as close, but getting toward Amazon in terms of how they approach it. So we have our core principles around the business. And so when we're interviewing people, we want to make sure that their core principles are actually aligned with what we deliver as a business, to make sure that they're a cultural fit as well. Having situational questions. So Amazon uses what they call the STAR method, where it's a sequence of behavioral questions to understand, was the individual the person who actually delivered on what they say they delivered on, or were they just involved and a part of it? An example, STAR stands for specific. So like defining the specific outcome or what's actually happening. What they were actually actioning on a day-to-day, and then moving into really deep diving into those questions, like, were they a project manager trafficking projects inside of the SEO function of the business, or were they actually the individual who was building links, building the strategy, doing the web development, H1, H2, and actually, what did they talk about themselves actually delivering on becomes, effectively fundamental in getting, a deep insight. So hopefully I'm answering some of your question there, Norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I just want to bring up, because it came up today, we were talking about some candidates and we were looking, and one of the things that stood out that I look at is the time the length of time they've stayed at other jobs. And if I see that there's a very short term, that gets my attention. That's a big red flag. So if somebody stayed a year, why are they hopping from job to job? And the chances are a leopard doesn't change their spots.
Yep.
And that's one of the first concerns that I would have. The other thing is, I just saw it come up in the comments, and this is a question that I always ask, because you also have to manage expectations. And so what are those expectations right up front? And I think the biggest one is, are you able to work, unless you don't have to, but in the Eastern Standard Time, right? And if we do have people that don't have to work that time, they can get things done based on their time period. But in some cases, you have to have somebody working 9 to 5 your time. And I found in the Philippines, there's a lot of people that have come off of call centers that are used to, working that route. But it's a very important question to ask.
For sure, and it really depends on how you as a business operates. It has to, at the end of the day, it really has to work for your business. Otherwise, it's pointless bringing anyone into that equation. And I'd agree with you. Having that, that choppy background and not having that level of commitment is definitely a warning sign. I think some people, especially earlier in their career, they think it's about collecting different experiences, where it is. But if you're having that in multiple different companies on a regular basis, it sets a really negative precedent, because, the ROI on that investment comes 6-12 months in. It's not from day one. If you build a really effective onboarding plan and you build a process as to how do you integrate them into your business, and also how do you actually build a career path for them. So, we're starting to touch on areas that relate to retention as well. It's absolutely pointless to keep going through this process time and time again. We both know how much time it takes to find that right candidate. If they're only going to stick around for 6 months, then, I probably would have just done the work myself if that's the case, if I had to do it every 6 months.
Yeah, giving them the tools to succeed. I think that's important. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, just very quickly, is how do you know when you do have the right fit?
Yeah. So if you go down that process, so if you define the outcome, what does success look like in the role, and you go into more granularities around, what attributes does that individual have to have, and what do they need to achieve. So they need to be able to launch 5 times as many new product launches a month, or a quarter, or whatever your cadence is bring new products to market. Whatever you define that those levels of success, it needs to have a 10 out of 10 rating. You need to make sure that whatever you're defining, you want to go in and define all the things that they're going to be directly responsible for, and what a successful outcome looks like. So we're both driving into the same direction. If you're marking them against that criteria, and you're asking questions through the interview that actually align with the role, what they'll be performing day to day, and what success looks like, then you get to a position where, it's no longer just a qualitative, I feel like this is the right person and the right fit. I've literally built a scoring system, 1 through 10, A through F, throughout, and I can quantify and say, this person, I interviewed 15 people. These top 3, she got an 87, she got an 85, he got an 82. Well, the 87 becomes, and especially if you've got multiple people interviewing as well, you cross-reference, and it just really breaks down that consideration where people get stuck in, how do I make the right decision? I'm scared I'm going to mess it up. So I'd say that's the first stage, is getting them over the line and having that process. The next is the first 90 days is critical. I'd say that if it doesn't feel like a right fit 3 months in, it's probably not going to be, but that can be for a number of reasons. So I think one of the really critical things when you go into that first 90 days is having a very clear onboarding plan, making sure that they understand what's happening in the business, building the information set so that they can get as acutely aware as to what's happening as quickly as possible. And then also, what are the expectations? Like, in month 2, I don't expect you to be, tripling sales, but what I expect is for you to already start building the plan. How are we going to grow? In really setting the defined expectations across that first 90 days and beyond is critical for your company and its growth, and that retention piece as well. So, I could go on about this forever, but building, if you want to retain talent, they need to understand what their growth looks like in the business. It's one thing to, every year on my yearly anniversary, cool, I get a pay bump by 5-10%, whatever you're handing out, and you just expect that. Like, that's not motivating anyone, especially not in today's world. So understand, like, how do I take on more responsibility? What do I need to check off to drive myself in the right direction? How do I make additional contributions to the business that actually are going to make me more and more valuable? And creating effectively linchpins or A players inside of your business is what you'd hope to create. And I think that becomes, a fundamental block for how you build larger companies.
Just a tip. One thing that I found is, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I've been outsourcing, but working with different contractors. I used to, if I had 20 hours worth of work or 15 hours worth of work, I'd hire for 15 hours worth of work. And the problem I had was, like you were talking about earlier, all of a sudden I have an emergency. Well, they just, got another job paying higher or something, right? So they went to that job and then they came back to work the next week or whatever it would be. What I've done is I hire full-time. Now, if it's very specific, I don't. But if it's a VA, if I can only give them 20 hours worth of work, I'm giving them 40. And even if they have to sit around, I don't care. But I want them to be, loyal to our company. And at that point, during those 20 hours, maybe I'm providing courses for them so they can go and learn and become even a stronger or more specialized in what they do. But I think it's a waste of time if you're only hiring a part-time VA.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And we built our model around full-time talent. I think that it's a few things. So it's not only the time crunch that you find yourself in when you're only giving them 15 hours and they have another client, also thinking about the potential stress that they have, that they've only got potentially that 20 hours and they've got to feed a family, for example, for anyone in the world. So there's that component to it, but also the culture. You want them to be, your culture, that you want them to be committed to the success of your collective buy-in here. It shouldn't be, again, I think freelancing is great for specific things that you're not going to need, ongoing delivery. But if it's a graphic designer or PPC management or inventory management, there's always, like you said, somewhere else that you can help educate them and give them more tools to effectively make them more intrinsically valuable to the business. And, that's a win-win. If someone gives me the opportunity to work 20 hours a week and gives me 20 hours of education so that I can then transition that into adding value, I'm taking that every day of the week.
Right. And I don't ever do this, but I got to give props to Tim Jordan.
Don't do it. Can we edit this? Can we edit this one out?
It's so tough to do, but I'm going to give him props. Prosper Show came up. So he wanted to have his, it was an executive assistant, but he wanted to make sure she felt part of the company. He flew her in from Venezuela for the Prosper Show. And, that couldn't have done, things couldn't be better, because now she got to meet people within the industry. She felt like a team player. And, I think that's important. Now, you don't have to fly in everybody from the Philippines or India, but you have to make sure that they feel like part of the team. If that's taking part in staff meetings or something, you have to make those, anybody you're bringing on, feel as a team member.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I hate to say it too, but Tim, that's mega play right there, my friend.
Don't say it.
I know.
He's already
You
got
started it. You started it.
I know. So, okay, last question, and then we'll get to the questions. I know we are limited on time. So, okay, let's talk about mistakes. What are some of the big mistakes you see people making?
The big mistakes I see people making, you touched on one earlier, that is trying to hire someone that can handle absolutely everything. The reality is we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Trying to go too deep and trying to just load someone up on every aspect of it, you're going to get a jack of all trades and a master of none here. And no one wants to have a subpar, listing, subpar listing visually, the copy plus, stranded inventory. Don't make that mistake in trying to hire someone who you think can handle absolutely everything.
Right. Except my senior project manager, Vandana. She's awesome.
Except her.
Except her.
So I'd say that's definitely one of the most common mistakes. I just highly advise against heading down that path. But I'd say as well, and this is in my best interest too. Like when I think about anyone who works with Multiply Me, we always want to educate people on how to be better hiring managers. If you don't know who you're hiring, then you're just wasting everyone's time here. So like I said before, and a few of the tips here, people don't come prepared to an interview. They'll rock up. They haven't really done their due diligence around what are the questions they want to ask. They haven't put together any tests. And I would say probably the mistake that 95% of people make, they don't do the reference checks. They don't actually go in and understand, it's the only time in the history of the relationship you have with this individual that they're going to freely hand over people that are their references, ask those questions, and even make sure that those references are valuable references. Norm, I asked on a few interviews for you to just, answer and say that I'm a good guy. But, the reality is you want to avoid those situations. So, I learned from one of our recruiters, and I thought it was brilliant. Whenever she gets and we've added this into our process, but whenever she gets a resume with candidates with references, we'll then speak to the references and we'll validate where they sit, but we'll also get additional references. Who else might they have worked with? Or if you're really smart, and we didn't even talk about how you build your candidate pipeline, but you also ask them if they know any other candidates that might be a fit for the role too, because that's a really smart way to leverage their professional network as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Kelsey, questions?
Yes,
comments?
Yeah, we can jump right into it. We do have some questions here. Also, for those Beard Nation members listening, let us know your experiences with VAs. What were your horror stories? Have you had any successes? Do you have any tips for the community? We'd love to know throw it over in the comment sections, and we'll jump into it. Also, don't forget about our Wheel of Kelsey giveaway today. We're doing a one-on-one consult with Yoni, so that is incredible. That's hashtag Wheel of Kelsey in the comment sections, and yeah, we'll jump into these questions. Let me see. The first one is from Jessica Rabbit. Do you consider the likelihood of the personalities of the client and candidates you'd recommend be interviewed?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jessica Rabbit. Absolutely. So, I would say that that's a critical. So when we go through our discovery calls with Multiply Me, we're trying to gauge, who is the team, who is the hiring manager, who's the person that they're going to be reporting into. And when you're vetting through this talent, you want to make sure that culturally they're a fit. I mean, that's one of the more important things. So yeah, it's a must.
Okay, great. We had a question about Pakistan. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry, I lost it. Okay, we'll do another one. Have you ever had to hire private investigators to check out candidates?
I've done that. I have done that.
Well, I'll let you take this one.
No, it doesn't cost that much. I had another company where somebody had just stole $85,000 over about a 2-year period, an accountant. And so I wasn't going to let that happen again. And so we hired a company here in Toronto that did a full background check. It didn't cost that much. And this was for an important position within our company. The company was growing, it was hyper growth at the time. And I think there was 3 candidates that we had background checks done on. So I have done that, but I don't know if I do that on somebody that's going to be a general VA or something like that. But
yeah. I mean, we definitely haven't hired a private investigator to do any of that work. There are companies that do exist that you can have, background checks. In the Philippines, to give you guys context, it's a super messy process. You actually have to go down to, to the local police station and get the information actually there. So it's pretty complex. We've looked into everything. So yeah, if you find a better solution, you tell me.
Very good. All right. The next one is from Adil. He's asking, how do you see the talent in the Pakistan region? Do you have any hiring percentages from there?
I don't have any hiring percentages from there, but a friend of mine, Saddam Hassan, who's AMZ One Step, they focus on Pakistan as their talent source, and they have a great agency. So I don't know necessarily about the percentages, but I know that there's definitely a strong community over in Pakistan for sure.
Yeah. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. I mean, they're all places that, again, different cultures. You have to understand, but talent pool, a huge talent pool.
Okay, and we just have a couple left. Another one from Jessica Rabbit. When you interview, what intangible do you hope to be present, or when you spot during the interview turns you off? So is there anything that gives you those green flags?
So I actually, I read a lot of books, but one of the books that really stuck with me that wasn't necessarily focused on interviewing, but has a solid portion about it is by Mark Roberge, The Sales Acceleration Formula. He's the guy who built HubSpot from 0 to 100 million in 7 years in recurring revenue. And he talks about 5 key areas that he looks for in salespeople, but I think it's relevant to all. So resonated with me. The first is curiosity. So, the guy that we've just hired to head up our marketing, I've never been, I'm interviewing him. I have never been, to this day, been grilled to the same level that he grilled me about what happens, what are the functions of the business, what's happening, making sense of the employer branding versus, finding talent versus how do we find clients, So that level of curiosity, I don't feel like it's something that can be taught. It's really something that has to be innate in someone. That's one thing that I always look for. Intelligence, and how he defined it in the book, is the ability to break down complex information into things that are very simple that, a 5-year-old could understand very quickly. So if people, you lose me when you just focus on high level theoretical, and I can talk strategy all day, but if you're not getting the words out that are really explaining what you've achieved, then we're going to have communication issues throughout, the working relationship. I would say those are two. I mean, I could keep listing a few more, but those would probably be the two I look at.
One of the areas that I was going to say the interview process, and they start to ask questions. But the other thing is if they've researched the company or done any research whatsoever, and if they can come back and say, that they've done research, that's a big green check mark. Because they're curious enough to go out and again, that word curious, they're curious enough to go out and try to find information about your company.
We and it's happened multiple times. We're hiring anywhere from sort of 50 to 70 roles at a time that we're constantly searching for. And I have people, like I'm sure both of you do, reaching out via LinkedIn or Facebook. And to this day, one of the people that we've now placed in another business, we just didn't have a role for him at the time, but brilliant. He actually defined how he connected Multiply Me and a Scala and the podcast. He listened to a few episodes, and I was like, my God, who on earth goes to this level of, pre-research before you even get on it? And honestly, since that day, I will do anything for this guy,
right.
Just because I know that wherever, if he works with us, if he works for anyone else, I know he's going to put in the work, and I knew that he has the curiosity and the follow through too. So yeah, hugely valuable. Easy way to impress.
Very good.
Okay. Do we have time for one more, do you think? Or
Yoni, you got time for another question?
I got 5 more minutes, so I'm good to go.
Okay.
So from Rad, how about Amazon recommends service providers? Can we hire them?
I'm not fully understanding the question here. Are you guys?
I think he's talking about the ASP network on Amazon. You'd have to test that out, Rad. Just because you're registered there doesn't mean you're good. So they do have a bit of a process, but it's not really a screening process. So just be careful, ask the right questions, do the interview process, just, like we were talking about today.
Okay, great. So we'll head on over to the wheel and do the giveaway. All right. So Yoni, I hope you're ready for this. This is our Wheel of Kelsey.
I mean, I'm sorry.
For the Wheel of Kelsey.
All right.
You guys have the best music. The best music. The intro, unbelievable. Kelsey, that is an absolute thing of genius right there. Back over to you, mate.
Appreciate it. I have to give credit where credit is due. That is my older brother Hayden that put together the music and the soundtrack. So thank you, Hayden, for our out there little shout out. But I'll shuffle this up and we'll get started. So this is the one-on-one consultation with Yoni. So if you are the winner, please email me k@lunchwithnorm.com and I'll give it a spin. All right. And let me see. The winner of today's episode is...
Oh, there you go.
Oh, is it Jessica Rabbit?
Fantastic.
All right. Great. So Rosalind, just let me know.
Hold it. The wheel is saying Usman.
That might be the delay on it.
Oh, okay.
It had the it had the Jessica Rabbit come up as the winner.
All right.
I think it should.
Okay.
I'm not trying to.
It's not rigged, right? Jessica,
Yeah.
Rosalind, did you send any money over to Kelsey?
There's been a whole lot of bribing this episode.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
That's it. Okay. So I think Rosalind knows or Jessica knows. Just send over the information over to Kelsey and he'll get back to you. All right, Yoni. Well, if anybody would like to contact you, would they do it?
Yeah, if they'd like to contact me, feel free to email me at Yoni@multiplyme, me spelled MII.com, or Yoni at weareescala.com. That'll get me directly. Or check out our website. I mean, if you want to book in a call with Kat and talk about everything that's related to hiring, there's a booking link on that. And for consulting through Escala, you'll get me. So pretty easy to find. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm less good at Facebook, so apologies.
All right, fantastic. Yoni, thanks for coming on. I'm going to have you on again sometime soon if you'll come back on.
It'd be my absolute pleasure, Norm. Love every chance I get to hang out with you.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. And right back at you. All right, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, mate.
All right. See ya. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. I think the next time we could build on this and be very specific about the hiring process, building it out, SOPs, lots of things that we could talk about with Yoni. So I just wanted to, put it out there. And also, if you're interested in hearing anybody, if you've heard somebody at an event, or if you've got a topic, please make sure that you put it in the onto the page or into the group. And Kelsey, maybe you can make something up where we do have something that's just an ongoing document where we could go in and ask people. Just different people today. I think I went through 14 new guests, and it's going to be fantastic. We love our repeat guests, but we also like introducing new people that sometimes aren't in the forefront of going out to events, but are definitely worth listening to. So this is all coming up over the next month or two. And by the way, next month, we went over the schedule with Kelsey earlier today. It's going to be a fantastic month. I think it's going to be probably the best month we've had since running the podcast. So, Kels, where are you, sir?
I am here.
Would you agree with me? Next month is going to be awesome.
It is a big month, and I think just starting it off, October 1st is Kevin King.
Yep.
So he's back. It's been a while since Kevin's been on. It's just been kind of crazy and a lot of scheduling issues that have arrived. So we got him, where it's going to be great Friday. And I also want to remind everyone about the Multiply Me. So we did have the one giveaway today with the Wheel of Kelsey, but Multiply Me did offer, they're waiving their executive search fees for any listener. So this is everyone. So if you're looking
that is crazy, by the way. I had no idea he was going to do that.
Yeah. So that's $500 off. So definitely check it out. We mentioned it at the very beginning of the podcast. So just any listeners that came in late, there's still that option for you guys. We got Alex Catoni for copywriting. That was a suggestion.
Perfect.
So you can email me at k@lunchwithnorm.com if you have any suggestions. That's probably the easiest way, just so I can keep track of everything and don't miss out. But we have a big episode Wednesday. It's our Beard Nation episode, our 200th episode. So it's going to be lots of fun. It's a little different. We have our Beard Nation members come onto the show. We've got 5 lined up, and it's always a lot of fun hanging out with our community. And then Kevin King, obviously, on Friday. So we got some big episodes happening.
All right. So I think that's it right now. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you could check out our Lunch with Norm podcast page on Facebook and check out our new chat bot. We just put it up there, and just want to make sure that the navigation is good. Can you the questions that we ask or the information that's provided, just want to get your feedback on it. And I think that's it. Until next time, join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Eastern Standard Time at noon. And thank you, everybody. I mean, Kels, I don't know about you, but did you ever think we'd make 200 episodes?
I had no idea. I didn't even know I'd be having a podcast.
Yeah, having that cigar the one day.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can't wait. We love having you guys as a community, all the engagement, all the questions. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the 200th.
Lunch with